The last of the AD&D hardcovers was also a Greyhawk book, and I want to talk about it today on Greyhawk Grognard. So, of course, I am referring to Greyhawk Adventures by Jim Ward. This was the last of the AD&D hardcovers. It still has the orange spine, but it was marketed as compatible with the AD&D and the second edition AD&D game systems. It was actually published before second edition came out, so the rules here are like not close to second edition, but not entirely consistent. There's a few little glitches because they were still finalizing things, but on the whole, you could it's definitely a 2E slash 1E book. The systems aren't that different anyway. And I thought I'd just go through what's in the book because it is a very nifty book. A lot of people overlook it when they're doing when they're doing their Greyhawk stuff, but it's even if you're playing later editions, it's got a lot of really cool ideas in here. I used a lot of these things for my 5e Greyhawk books. So, I kind of translated them from first to fifth. And I'm just going to go through it here. And the first thing up is we have deities and clerics of Greyhawk. This is one of the most 2e-ish sections of the book because clerics changed a lot from first to second. They started to have domains, and specialty clerics were kind of the norm, which they originally started off in Dragon Magazine and the Gold Box. But we have a bunch of the clerics listed here along with their deities. Another big change that we see here is that the deity listings aren't for the deity himself; they are for the avatars of the deity. And this was a big conceptual shift because from the beginning of the game when deities and demigods came out, gods, demigods, and heroes, I should say. The big thing was, oh, I killed Odin or I killed Zeus or whatever, and by making this shift, you weren't really able to do that. You could slay their avatar in the material plane, and we have a bunch of deities in here listed: Bakob, Celestian. One of the interesting things they have here is that the clerics don't really have spell domains like they do in 2e. That's one of the kind of mechanical things that didn't translate over yet. And they don't have special powers like they did in the gold box. So, sometimes a deity, a cleric would have, get like a +1 on this or could use this weapon or something like that. They can't do that in this book, but they do have unique spells. So there's, it's kind of a trade-off of of one thing for another. It kind of stabilized when 2e came out and they had both powers and spells and stuff like that. But we have Celestian, who gets, for example, an additional spell, Meteors. Um, they can add different spells from the different spell lists into their own. Um, they have, there's Saint Cuthbert. He gets an additional spell. His clerics get an additional spell. Beguiling. There's Elona, Falangen, Incabilis Istus, Ayuz, and his special spell is Spittle, where you can actually spit on somebody and it has you can like knock them unconscious or they can't attack or something. It's pretty wild. Nerul, Foltus, his clerics get Sunburst, which makes sense. He's a sun deity, Ralashaz, and Ula. So there's a couple of deities in here that we didn't see before, which was kind of a nice touch. Jim Ward, of course, actually got to play with Gary in Greyhawk, so that's why he was tagged to do this book. So, he's going to have a little more insight into it. But it's very obviously not Gary's writing. Jim Ward's voice comes through very loud and clear in this book, and it's which is not a bad thing. There were non Gygax stuff that was published for Greyhawk before, but it's just something to note. So next up, we have the monsters of Greyhawk, and this is a really interesting section on a number of levels. First, it has a stat that doesn't appear in actual second edition. It must have been something they were thinking about including and didn't. I think it's a great idea, and I don't know why they wouldn't include it. And that is a reaction modifier. The reaction modifier is a guide for DMs in determining a creature's initial reaction. Remember, this was back in the days when you were supposed to make a reaction roll when you found a monster. It wouldn't automatically attack. It would, it could be friendly or neutral or hostile or whatever. And there's some gradations. And this allowed the monster to have a different type of reaction depending on its nature. So every time you rolled a 3, it wouldn't be hostile or whatever. So it was kind of a really cool idea, and one which I don't know why it got lost. And if I had noticed it when I was making Adventures Dark and Deep, I would have included it because it is a great idea. The higher the number, the less aggressive the creature will be. A low roll means the creature acts more aggressively. So, for example, a beast man has a reaction modifier of +2, which means they're less inclined to be hostile. I love that idea. It's so simple, so effective. It really makes sense. Uh, some of the creatures in this book did appear later in the MC5 Greyhawk Monstrous Compendium Appendix. Some didn't. It's probably for space reasons. Like the Beastman does, the Vampire Cactus does not. So it's just who knows what the reasoning was. I'm not going to go through every monster in here. There are some really cool ones and some that became somewhat iconic, and quite a few that didn't. So, for example, the Greyhawk dragon is now kind of a staple of the setting, whereas something like the Ingundi, which is a shape-shifting lizard man, kind of isn't. You get the sword wraiths, which is the undead spirits of the Stark Mounds, which is a great. I love that kind of thing. I love that kind of geographically specific monster. The sea zombies, drowned ones. I love this picture. I love this picture of the drowned ones. Let me see if I can get it in there. With the hook coming through the door. I just think that's such a cool thing. Um, but what I really like about this section is the intro, which I'm sure most people just zoomed right by. But it gives this little background as to why there are so many monsters around the city of Greyhawk. Um, the astounding variety. I'm going to read the whole section because it is just too good not to share. And this is the kind of quirky stuff that Jim Ward brought to this book and to his later Greyhawk stuff that just floors me. I love this kind of stuff where he just, yeah, it's obviously still it's still Greyhawk. It's still Gary's setting, but it's speaking with Jim Ward's voice, and I love that. The astounding variety of monsters found in and around Greyhawk is a direct result of an unusual fad which gripped the city several hundred years ago. It seemed as if everyone wanted mated pairs of unusual creatures. At that time, a huge market existed for expensive mated pairs of rare and often dangerous creatures. The mated pair business was big business. All too often, however, the new owners of these rare and often dangerous creatures did not know how to take care of them. Many monsters were set free, others escaped into the wilds around the city. There they grew and raised their young, and that is why creatures normally found only in the Crystal Mist Mountains or in the plains of the Paynims can be found near the city of Greyhawk. Needless to say, there is now a law against bringing mated pairs of creatures into the Greyhawk area. Strangers are always amazed when their male and female donkeys are slain before their very eyes right in front of the gates of the city. What? My God. Such precautions are a little like locking the barn door after the horse escapes, however. Countless unusual creatures thrive in the Greyhawk area. These creatures are described below. It's just, you can't bring a male and a female donkey into the city because there's a law against bringing mated pairs of monsters. That's the kind of thing I just love that kind of stuff. It is so cool. But yeah, monsters. Some great ones, some not so great ones. But my God, this is a fun section. Next up, we have the Hall of Heroes. These are stats and write ups for a bunch of NPCs, famous NPCs. Some we had heard of before, some we had not. But they have very extensive write ups about their personalities and histories and powers and so forth. We had seen, obviously, NPCs before in Greyhawk, but they were always in the context of a adventure. So, yes, we saw Klavdra and we got stats for her, but we only got little snippets of background and personality and stuff enough for the module itself. Same thing with Obmi and other characters like that later on became much more famous. Here we have enormous write-ups. I mean, more than a page for each one of these, and they're really interesting and in a lot of cases important. So like Neroth Gaskell, the mayor of Greyhawk. Um, the writer Fanshin, a constable in the city, Sental Nurev, the captain general of the watch, who's a what is he here? He's a 13th level fighter, things like that. The master of the thieves guild and the assassins guild, Turin Deathstalker, Ren of the Star, master of the Free Traders Union. So all this stuff is very neat and put together. We see the Valley of the Mage. We see Jaren Crimea. They changed the name on us here. For the Lord of the Valley. Here, I didn't think to do a comparison of this version of Crimea with the one that appeared in the Veil of the Mage module. But this guy's a 19th level magic user, and it gives some more of his background and spells and stuff. We have the Drow lieutenant, and we got Scarlet Brotherhood. We have we have the Father of Obedience for the Scarlet Brotherhood, Corinth Zahn. It's stuff like this. It was so unique at the time to get this kind of detail on an NPC that, yeah, he's a famous NPC, but he wasn't in an adventure. So this was a perfect tool for DMs who wanted to bring these things um, into your campaign. We've got just elsewhere on Earth, Karl of Ernst, the Duke, Tang the Horrific, the from the Dry Steppes. He's another. There's another one which has this great image of him just carrying this big dragon head on the back of his horse. Demetrios Spartacos from the Great Kingdom. He's a magic user. It's just these great NPCs that you could drop into your campaign if you needed to, and they each get more than a page of description and history and everything. So it's very, very complete and very well done. Again, I think that's a lot of those we saw come obviously in later products as well. Some of them just were here and never to be seen again. So this is definitely untapped field in some ways for folks who want to use some NPCs in your campaign. Next up, we have magical spells, and this is one of my favorite sections. I took a lot of these spells and upgraded them to 5e when I made my 5e player's guide to Greyhawk. This is, to my mind, one of the best sections because it really gives some insight into some of the most famous and most important NPCs in the campaign. Now, I don't know whether or not these were actually spells of the campaign. I get the impression from things I've read over the years that this was Jim Ward had just made these up based on other things, but it is possible that he took some things that were actually used in the original campaign. I don't know for sure one way or the other. If you do know, if there's a something that Jim had said over the years, do please post it in the comments. I want to know. But again, here we have wonderful things like Bigby's Bookworm Bane and Bigby's Dexterous Digits. They're very thematic. They're very, as you would expect. Mordenkainen's Protection from Slime, Drawmidge's Beneficent Polymorph, that sort of thing. So it's they're kind of thematically tuned to their creators. But again, it's the intro to this section, which I'm sure most people just fly right by, which is the best part of it. It is common knowledge in all the interplanar dimensions that the spellcasters of Earth are the most powerful in all the multiverses. Each and every one of the most powerful have at some time made their home in the city of Greyhawk. The following is a list of little known but highly useful spells from these mages. A great effort has been made to present the most useful of these spells, but also not to give away the entire store. There are no 8th or 9th level spells, as these were too well protected for even this powerful scribe to acquire. Spells like Drawmidge's Instant Stripping And Otto's gelatinous cube transformation to edible gel have been left off as too esoteric for even the most curious spellcrafter. What? Okay. Because of their stay in the city of Greyhawk and the highly magical nature of that town, all of these spells can be seen in use in and out of the city. Scrolls of these spells can be found in all the best treasure hoards. Strange wands and rings of magic will often have these spells planted in them for instant use. So, right there, we get a lot of really cool little detail around the city. A lot of the book is focused on the city, and but a whole new vista of magic items opens up with that one little paragraph. So I think that's really, really cool. And again, I'm not going to go through them all. There's Autoluke, Rary, Tensor. There's all the big names that you would expect to see are covered in here. Now, next up, we have magical items of Greyhawk. And I gotta say, this is probably the weakest, well, one of the two weakest sections of the book. We'll get to the other one in a minute. Um, but it gives a whole bunch of magic items, which is great. But each one has the name of a Greyhawk place in the name of the items. So there's like the Ring of the Pomarch, the Lucky Ring of the Wild Coast, the Chalice of the Shieldlands. That I think is a big miss. I think in their zeal to tie these items to the setting, they kind of got a bit too formulaic, and every item has to have place. I don't like that. You could have a lot of things tied to deities or NPCs or historical events or places or something. You could vary it, or you don't even need honestly something like that in the name itself. You could have it in the description and it would be just as good. No, I'm if I use one of these, I'm not going to say oh, it's a ring of the Pomarch. No, it's a ring that does X, Y, and Z. So it's uh, in that sense, I don't like it. And a lot of these things, in trying to get linked to the settings so specifically, they are just kind of useless and bad. Um, there's some good ideas in here, and I'm not saying the entire thing isn't worth looking through, but some of there's some very good magic items in here that are unique and do wonderful things. But there are also some things in here that are quite obviously, oh, we needed to have X number of magic items in here, and let's throw something together. So I get it. Such are the demands of publishing, but I wish they had been able to take a little more time and do a little more creative work on the magic items section. Next up is the geography of Orth, and this gives descriptions of some interesting and dangerous places in the setting. So you have the pinnacles of Alzor Alk, which are have haunted Bakluni legend for upwards of 3,000 years. It's very evocative, very cool. A lot of these have shown up in later. Either in Dragon Magazine or Dungeon Magazine or some adventures or whatever. There's a big thing about the Sea of Dust, the pits of Azak Zil, the Sinking Isle, which is one of my favorites. There's just a lot of really cool ideas here, and obviously, again, I'm not going to go through everything. Some of these have really taken a hold of the fans' imaginations, like the Burning Cliffs and so forth. Some of these have kind of languished in this book and not really had much done with them. No, this is where we see the Tovag Baragu, that magic stone circle in the Baklunish regions that is involved in time travel, and we see it with the Vecna modules and stuff. There's a lot of it appears a lot of times. Then we've got Rigodorok, I think that's how you pronounce it, where you hardly see it ever mentioned again. So there's some good things, some interesting things. One of the cool things I love, Esmerin, in the Lort Mill Mountains, where the the elves and everything have driven out the orcs. That appears in the novelization of the Hateful Wars, which I is a fan done novel, which I highly recommend. But he actually talks about Esmeralda in there, so it's well worth checking out. So again, some things that you will absolutely have heard of, some things you probably haven't unless you've gone through the book, because they haven't really appeared a lot outside of the book. But again, something definitely to look at. And the last chapter in the book, there's an appendix or two that we're going to talk about, is Adventures in Greyhawk. And these are little one-page adventures for characters of different levels, including zero levels, which we're going to get to in a second. And these are hit or miss. I'm not going to lie. Some of them are pretty interesting. Some of them aren't. Um, it's, you're going to have to evaluate them for yourself. I mean, if you're looking for something that you really need to run quickly, like at a convention for a couple hours, or if you're wanting for something at your home game and the adventure happens to be of the right level, it'll work. I might actually want to turn one of these into a convention game that I run. That would be kind of interesting. But there's some good ones and some not so good ones. There's entering the Valley of the Mage. There's the House of Cards, which can be used by any number of characters by any level. Um, and it details like a gambling house, which is a really cool idea. That you just have this. It's not an adventure so much as a location. I would have liked more of that kind of thing. Things that you could just kind of plunk down whenever you needed it, rather than an actual adventure with a plot and a goal. There is that. There's and then some optional encounters and so forth. So again, just like some of the other sections, there's been some good and some bad. Personally, I like the ones that are not quite so, this is an adventure, here's what you have to do, so much as here's a location that you could use in your game. And here we come to what I think is the weakest part of the whole thing, the whole book. That is zero level characters. I hate this idea. We tried it once when this came out. It was awful. It makes no sense. It is so obvious. It never got play tested. And I do recall Jim Ward saying that a lot of this stuff never got play tested in this book. And I can believe it. But this especially, it's just ideas thrown on a page, and it results in zero level characters being more powerful than first level characters. You have your abilities go all over the place. You can get spells, and there's luck, and it is it is a mess. It is if anybody has been able to get this to work, please, I want to hear about it, because this is just, to my mind, it is unusable in as it's written. It's contradictory to the rest of the game. It's in its zeal to see that you can learn a little bit about everything, and ends up making really overpowered characters that aren't even supposed to be first level yet. It's just it's not it's not a good thing. There we are. So anyway, that is those are my thoughts on the Greyhawk Adventures book. Overall, I love this book. I think it's a wonderful book. I will have a link to purchase it down below. So if you, I would love to hear your thoughts on this book. I will endeavor to put a couple of links up here so you can of things that are relevant. And hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day. And please do visit my online store. A link will be below, where I'm selling my brandy new book, the Book of Lost Lore 2, just came out. So please do check it out. Hope you're having a great day, and I'll talk to you later.